Okay, so one of the things that I'd like to talk about for a minute, boy, NLP got famous rather quickly, well, amongst a limited circle, but famous for one thing in particular that attracted all kinds of attention to it. Somebody, and I don't remember who the guy was. I'd like to find out and see if we can get a copy of this. Somebody went on Oprah Winfrey show and says, "We got a cure for phobias that you can do in 10 minutes." Phobias in 10 minutes. Nobody had ever heard anything like that before. And that was the first time that NLP really sort of popped out into the public and said, not only do we got something good, we got something good, we got something quick, something, that will blow your socks off, the likes of which you have never seen before. Right? And and by the way, it seems to be true. They have got a cure for phobias that works in 10 minutes. Actually, and I got to admit, I am in the special ed class with regard to this. It takes me about 12, but because I saunter. Some people are in more of a hurry than I am. I figure if you've dedicated half of your life to being phobic about something, the least you can do is give it a dozen minutes before you let it go completely. Um, yeah, so the 10-minute phobia cure. Not today, by the way, not in this segment, but we're gonna come up to that. I just thought I'd tease you with it a little bit because I like doing that. But the reason that I mentioned it in the first place is at the beginning of NLP, when they were developing these things, when they were putting them together, they did something that nobody had ever done in psychotherapy before. The world of psychotherapy, by the way, if you ask a professional therapist what their worst case issues are to work with people, or particularly not, I don't mean people that work with like multiple personality disorders and stuff like that. But I mean, people that do everyday kind of, counseling services and those things, they will tell you there's nothing harder to deal with than phobias. And that they keep trying and they keep trying and it takes them forever. So when NLP made this claim, it was startling, really, at least to the therapeutic world. But I'll tell you what, NLP did something that psychotherapists had never done. And the DSM, by the way, the Diagnostic Manual, for those of you who aren't familiar with what that is, which is the book that describes all the ways to be crazy. If you're ever looking for some party games, by the way, take this book and read some, and do some of these things. They're great. You could just consider them exercises. Stretch yourself a little bit. Altered states experiences, because some of them are pretty cool. But the world of psychotherapy is a study of broken people with problems, and so they study schizophrenia as if somebody wants to learn how to do that. But seriously, they study and get every detail and every nuance of ways to not be normal, rather than investing the time and effort to figure out. See, what we ought to be doing is not studying schizophrenics, but studying people that have been subjected to the same class of stimulus without having these sort of responses and going, what is it that enables this person to be resilient? What is it that means that this person isn't going to have that problem? So when Bandler and Grinder decided they wanted to take on phobias, they didn't say, okay, let's get a bunch of people together that have phobias and find out how that works. The study of the structure of subjective experience, by the way, suggests that we might want to study how people are phobic. That could be useful information. What do you have to do inside to do that? What's involved in having a phobic response? But that's really not what we're interested in if we're interested in helping people get out of them. What we're interested in and what they studied was they put an ad, they got 100 participants, they put an ad in the paper in Santa Cruz and asked if there's anybody out there that has had a phobia and no longer has it, that has had a phobia and somehow gotten over it. That's who they wanted to talk to, which is exactly the right audience. And it's funny because after the fact, hearing that, I'm like, well, gosh, of course, that makes sense, rather than the way that they had been going about it originally. And I think I probably would have been foolish enough to say, yeah, let's get a whole bunch of people with phobias together and try a bunch of stuff and see if we can find something that works. But so they brought these people in and they started interviewing them. And what they heard these people say was, well, I used to I used to be afraid of spiders. He says, but one day I sort of looked at myself and the way that I was reacting and decided that that was ridiculous. I'm like, I looked at myself. I saw it in a different way. I saw myself in a certain way. This phrase seems to have kept cropping up again and again and again. Looking at myself was the unique phrase shared by this community of people. I'm like, well, isn't that interesting? And the first of the submodalities in NLP presents itself out of that phrase because it's talking about dissociation. To see myself is not to be myself, right? It's to step out. So that's dissociation. There I am. This is association. Here I am, right? In other words, if I were to ask you to see yourself on a carousel, you'll be watching the carousel. It goes, and there you are, and it goes around, and you disappear around the back side, right? And then there I come again, right? You understand, right? You're seeing yourself over there. Now, if I were to ask you to imagine being on a carousel, you would never disappear. You would keep going up and down, right? And by the way, but you would also never see your face any more than you do right now while you're sitting here in this room. So there are these two options. Dissociated, there I am, that's what I look like, that's what I'm doing, and I'm not in it, or here I am in it. By the way, it's a really important distinction. There are some people who you remind them of some bad thing that happened to them 20 years ago, and when they think about it, suddenly they're in the middle of a trauma again. And it's because they access that memory in an associated way. There was a day when I was being beat up by my old man. And you ask me, and there I am, and I wasn't, by the way, it's not me, but just, figuratively speaking. But so you ask, and the person says, oh yeah, I'm being, here I am, right in it as I recall it. And I'm seeing it from that place, as opposed to if it's some movie that I'm watching over there, that's a really different experience. I can look at it, I can describe it, and I'm not in it in my body, and it doesn't hurt me anymore. Does this make sense? So association, dissociation, very, very useful thing. By the way, I will tell you the secret of falling in love and the secret of falling out of love. The way to fall in love is to associate into every thought, every memory, every idea you have about that other person that is good and pleasant and positive, and to disassociate from every thought, idea, memory, suggestion from your friends, your mothers, your relatives that is not pleasant or desirable. And how many of us know that? Have you ever had a boyfriend or a girlfriend or a husband or a wife or whatever you get, and somebody says to you some bad things about that person, and you just can't relate? No, not my experience, because you've completely dissociated from anything undesirable about that person and associated with all the good stuff. And by the way, so guess what? The strategy for falling out, it's just the opposite of that. Associate with all of the unwanted stuff, which is what happens. Well, look at what happens at the end of relationships. Oh, he did this to me. He said that to me. And they're right in it while they're describing it, while they're remembering it. And you ask them about some pleasant times they had together. Oh yeah, those things happen. It's over there somewhere. They're not really in it or connected to it any longer. Curious. So here's a really powerful tool. Not just for falling in and out of love, not just for being traumatized or untraumatized by your past. But see, wouldn't it be great if you could teach yourself to associate with all of the wonderful, positive, warm, loving memories and experiences in your life, and to dissociate from the ones that aren't that? You don't have to feel miserable just because somebody is a jackass or treats you badly. You know what I mean? And some people feel obligated. I'm like, wouldn't it be interesting if when people did things that were annoying or bothersome or offensive to you, if you could be at a distance from that, go, yeah, that's happening over there somewhere. By the way, the nice thing about have it happening over there, as opposed to, I'm not talking about being unconscious, I'm talking about just make a distance. So you can remember things. I wouldn't want people to have amnesia for their traumas in their past either. I really don't like that. So and by the way, if you're doing hypnosis, every once in a while you'll get somebody that says, I've got this girlfriend that I've broken up with and I can't get over it. I would like you to hypnotize me so that I don't remember that I ever even knew her. That's ridiculous. Because even if you could succeed at that, it's the frickin' twilight zone when they wake up. Or people will say this about smoking. They'll say, I'm a smoker. I don't want to smoke, but I just can't stop. So maybe if you could hypnotize me so that I didn't even remember that I ever smoked a cigarette. I'm like, well, how are you going to explain all those ashtrays around your house when you get home? How are you going to, and by the way, and when the check comes back that you paid for this session, what are you going to think it was for? And when your friends say, well, I noticed you're not smoking, and you say to them, well, I don't smoke. I've never smoked in my life. It's going to be like you're on, right? Like you're on the outer limits of the twilight zone or some really strange thing. So even if you could do it successfully, not a good idea. But not a bad idea to be able to retain your memories, but to be able to organize them in such a way that you don't have to feel bad now about something that was a bad experience in the past. And that you get to feel good now, and you get to keep feeling good now about things even if they happened a long time ago. So to be able to govern when you can associate and when you can dissociate, what a great thing.